everyone. It's 6:30 and we're off to a very late start. But nonetheless, we'll see how best we can get through. A woman is cooking and suddenly the husband appears behind the wife's back and says, "Careful, careful, put more fat in the pan. You're frying too many at a time. Too many, flip them, flip them. Come on, put more fat in the pan. Oh dear Lord, how are you going to make space for the fat now?" And he goes on and he goes on and he goes on. "Hurry, you're crazy. Take it easy. You've forgotten the salt, you've forgotten the pepper. Flip it, turn it, do something." The wife stares at her husband. "What's wrong with you? You think I can't fry a few eggs?" The husband answers calmly, "I just wanted to show you what it feels like when I'm driving." Seriously speaking, if peanut oil is made from peanuts and olive oil is made from olives, corn oil is made from corn, then what is baby oil made from? Perhaps our authors this evening can posit answers for our consideration. Vice Chancellor Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. Let me acknowledge Professor Denzel Williams, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Campus Principal of the Mona Campus, other Pro-Vice Chancellors here present, Deans and other members of our senior management team here at the Mona Campus, Dr. Lystra Fletcher Paul, Mrs. Carleen Stanbury, the Honorable Floyd Green, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries and Mining, Mr. Dermot Spence, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Mr. Kent Coppell, representative, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, former principal of the Mona Campus, Professor Dale Weber and Professor Mona Weber, former deputy principal of the Mona Campus, Professor Ian Boxhill, Deacon Lyndall Tomlin, ladies and gentlemen, all directors of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, good evening. At this time, please allow me to invite Deacon Lyndon Tomlin to come and to offer prayer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let us bow our heads in reverence. Our righteous and eternal Father God, we thank you for this afternoon. We thank you for the occasion on which we are gathered for the launch of this book. We thank you, dear Lord, for Dr. Stanbury and Dr. Fletcher Paul, for the inspiration that you have given them. And we do pray that the success of this book will help to guide our planning and policies in regards to the security of foods for the future of the Caribbean. We ask for you to take care of this evening's proceedings, and may everything be said and done in the power of your holy name. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. Dr. Stanbury, you know, as I wondered about this evening, the question on everybody's lips was, how did you secure bananas? Now, it just so happened that when I got home last night, Vice Chancellor, I discovered a bunch, and had I remembered that the book launch would have been today, then I would have engaged you in a commercial discussion, you know, because we are about entrepreneurship here at the Mona Campus. Dr. Stanbury and Dr. Lystra Paul are in the business, Fletcher Paul are in the business of securing food. Not quite sure it's the thing we want to be talking about at 6:30 in the evening, but that's a different conversation, because by the looks of things, if you're like, well, perhaps like me, you're famished, but we'll see how the evening goes. That's a cue for all the speakers to be crisp and succinct and lean and to the point. Of course, I'm not referring to the next speaker. Were I to do that, then I would be out of a job tomorrow. So, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce and welcome, to make opening remarks, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles.
The registrar, of course, is aware that since the passing of Fidel Castro, who holds the record for the longest speech in the history of the modern world, 5 hours and 38 minutes, that some of us have been practicing. to, to make sure that record stays in the Caribbean. But thank you, Registrar. You would be aware that the principal is, we're told, running late. And usually when I travel, the principal acts for me. So on this occasion, I'm acting for him. So, Honorable Minister, it's a pleasure to see you, Mr. Green, and I should say to friends and colleagues that Mr. Green is one of my finest students. I always knew he was going to make a brilliant politician, because when I was principal at the Cayfield campus and he became president of the Guild. Now, the Jamaican students were only 5% of the electorate. And how he was able to persuade all them Trinis and Bajans and Antiguans and all Guyanese and win the popular vote, it was pure skill and brilliance. So, Minister, pleasure to be with you. Again, all of my distinguished colleagues from the agricultural community. I was going to say fraternity, but I know Jamaica has a strong tradition of female farmers, and long may it be. And all of my other colleagues who are here from the university, excellencies, very good evening, everyone. I am reliably informed that today is Eat Jamaica Day. And today is also International Men's Day. And if you put that together, what do you get? Jamaican man love him food and love him Jamaican food. So this is all beautifully dialectical. And Minister Green would also support me when I state that one of the things I did at the Cayfield campus in my time there, I planted 25 ackee trees to make sure that the Jamaican students got their breakfast. And those trees are flourishing on the campus at the moment. Now, I had to give a speech, however, to those Jamaican students to say, listen, I am planting these trees for you, but they're not your trees. Because on the St. Augustine campus, there were also some ackee trees, and the Jamaican students took the view, them are we tree. And if any group of students from another island dare pick those ackees, from time to time, we used to have the ackee wars. And the ackee wars were Jamaican men versus all the others. Don't mess with our ackee trees. So that's part of the rich legacy of our university. Now, I have some knowledge of the history of Jamaican agriculture, you know, the whole slavery thing, emancipation all the way through, and, you know, observing how Jamaicans had come to associate emancipation with farming, owning land and farming, and developing a very, very strong culture around not only agriculture, but village life, villages, churches, and creating a remarkable sense of community out of emancipation based on farming and access to land. That is in the DNA of the Jamaican community and the Jamaican nation. And associating agriculture and farming with freedom is still a very powerful force in Jamaican society. Now, it is interesting to note that when we look at the origins of Jamaican people, African people in Jamaica, primarily in the 18th century up to emancipation, the vast majority of the African people in Jamaica today, especially rural Jamaica, the western part of the sugar plantation economy, the majority of them are from Igbo land, which is eastern Nigeria. And you don't really feel that until you go through eastern Jamaica, eastern Nigeria, up the Iruchukwu River, and you go into Igbo land and you say, oh my God, this is Jamaica. those Igbos just brought their agriculture out of Igbo land and just planted it down in Jamaica. You know, the only place in West Africa and the only place in the Caribbean where farmers plant their yam on a stick is in Jamaica. And the only place in West Africa where you see the farmers planting their yam on a stick is in eastern Nigeria. And all the other places in West Africa and all the other places in the Caribbean, the yam vine runs on the ground. In Barbados, when I was growing up, peasant farming, you had to go find, you hold the vine and you search for the root. And that was, of course, not very efficient. But the Igbos of Jamaica, the Igbos of Nigeria, pretty smart, stick something in the ground, let the vine grow. And it's a beautiful sight to see when you travel through eastern Nigeria. And it is all about self-sufficiency. It's about community. It's about freedom. And therefore, I have the greatest admiration for the farming community of Jamaica, the legacy of agriculture here, very strong. And you know, Minister, they say that you must eat what you grow. In Barbados, when I was living there as a young child, 90% of the land space, as you know, Floyd, 90% of the land space was tied up on sugar plantation. And if you had to grow, and then if you had to eat what you grow, well, we grew sugar and nothing else, and we ate sugar. Barbados was one of the few places in the world where people ate sugar as a meal. Poor working class people ate sugar as a meal, which explains today why Barbados has the highest percentage of type 2 diabetics per capita in the world, which explains why Barbados is called the amputation capital of the world, because they have more amputations as a result of complications from type 2 diabetes than any other place in the world. It ties back to agriculture. If you grow and eat what is unhealthy, you would have a fundamental health crisis. Jamaica is in a very good position to beat the chronic disease pandemic because you have a tradition of growing fruits and vegetables and healthy food. All we have to do is to deepen that connection, get back to the roots, and we will solve that problem. So, Minister, you are in a very good position to speak to this legacy and to this history. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Colleagues, I want to publicly commend Dr. Stando. You know that he is a man of the cloth. He is a pastor. And he is the Chief Operating Officer of not only our oldest, but our largest campus. And yet, he finds time to research. This is his second manuscript. Professor Brown, he could rival many of the academics, and in fact, he would qualify to be promoted to the professorship. I really am proud of him. But what is this manuscript about? Food security in the Caribbean. To answer that question, to whet our appetite, to dish out a full course, is Dr. Patricia Northover, Senior Research Fellow at Salesius. And so, Pat, please come and help us understand what the text is all about.
Greetings, one and all, wherever you are today, this evening. It's a rich discourse that we have already from the conversations that have been initiated about our history, our roots, our connections across Africa and the Caribbean, and why it's so important for us to maintain these traditions in order to survive, to stay alive. To eat what we grow is a healthy condition. It's a condition under which we are seeking sustainable futures. I have a history of a relationship with Professor Dr. Stanbury. I mean, it's Professor Stanbury. Actually, we co-supervise a student looking at agri-parks. But he was the one who saw and encouraged me to do 2 films on the Jamaican sugar industry, for which our Honorable Minister was present at the press release and launch of those films. So it's really a wonderful connection to be here today. And I'm honored to say these few words in honor of these 2 illustrious authors in this text. So good evening, everyone. It's my distinct pleasure to be here today to offer a few brief remarks on this masterful text on food security in the Caribbean, historical perspectives, current challenges, and sustainable solutions, co-authored by our own Dr. Donovan Stanbury and this Professor Paul. And shout out to the sisters and the relatives in the house. This work expresses a deep labor of love and scholarship by these 2 eminent and ardent advocates for regional food security. And it will surely become vital reading for anyone interested in agriculture and food security, as well as the well-being of the region's peoples. But food is a complex social thing. It's more than our biophysical need, as it connects people, as we learned today, with each other and with our complex ecosystems of the earth. Food security, likewise, is a complex and contentious political and policy object that touches on questions of human freedom and rights, as well as sovereignty and sustainable development. At the moment, our global food system is being heavily and hotly debated, given its negative contributions to global change drivers. For example, its contributions to climate change, driven largely through modern agricultural land use systems that have strongly impacted on biodiversity loss and greenhouse gas emissions. Approximately 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions are contributed to agriculture, 1/3. Its contribution to the silent epidemic of diet-related non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension, via the globalization of our food preferences, and its role in creating the socio-ecological conditions for the emergence of what is called zoonotic diseases, that is, viruses that jump from animals to affect humans. And this has led to complex shocks like the COVID-19 pandemic, which greatly increased hunger across the world and worsened food insecurities across the Caribbean. In addition, the region's food vulnerability is deepening because of the increasing frequency and severity of disruptions of climate events such as hurricanes, floods, and droughts. And Minister Green, you've been in the trenches working with Beryl and then Raphael, which have been coupled with geopolitical instabilities like the Ukraine-Russian war. These instabilities have provoked a cost of living crisis for households and farmers in the region, given the increase in the price of food, feed, fertilizer, and fuel. However, lower than the price peaks that we experienced with the COVID-19 shock. This complex state of Caribbean vulnerability is a central concern for Stanbury and Fletcher Paul's text, which highlights the generally high level of dependency on imported foods by small states and their marked sensitivity to external shocks. Indeed, this publication has highlighted that within CARICOM, only Belize and Guyana are producing more than 50% of the food provided locally, while the others have import food dependency ratios ranging from 60%, for example, in Jamaica, to as high as 95% in the case of St. Kitts, and followed by Bahamas at 90%. This is combined with another disturbing feature of the region, which is that it has the highest cost in comparison to all the other regions in the world for procuring a healthy meal. This cost is estimated at $4.23 US per day. This means, as the authors note, that 52% of the region's peoples cannot access a healthy diet because they cannot afford it. In light of these facts, it is not surprising then that the region is suffering from what the authors have described as a quiet epidemic of obesity, rising levels of diet-related non-communicable diseases, which together are responsible for 70% of the deaths in the region. This is clearly an unsustainable situation, both in terms of the risk and the costs being shouldered by persons in the region, but also because of the fiscal implications of both high health burdens and high food import bills for mostly debt-constrained, middle-income small states. In this daunting context, how exactly can regional food security be secured? This is a serious task that this text sets out to systematically address. Now, according to the 1996 definition by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, food security means realizing, and I quote, that all peoples at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food which meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. This definition rests on 4 pillars: food availability, food access, both economic and physical, food utilization, which is how it is that we convert it into nutrients for our bodies, for our health, and food stability. However, it has been recently expanded in 2020 by the high-level panel of experts on food and nutrition security to include 2 additional dimensions. And these are critical for the Caribbean given our colonial history. And these 2 additional dimensions are agency and sustainability. I propose that it is these dimensions, 6-fold, of food security that lie at the heart of Dr. Stanbury and Fletcher Spahl's comprehensive and critical intervention, which seeks to unpack, with special reference to the Caribbean community, the underlying and contextual drivers of the region's food problem. This task of dissecting its complex and multidimensional character is organized into 8 chapters. In their opening chapter, the authors adopt a historical and analytical approach which builds on the insights and contributions of earlier generations of food and development scholars, as well as agricultural economists. They offer an insightful historical analysis of the concept of food security and contextualize our regional concerns for food security through the discussion of past and more recent food crises and responses to them. They complement this with an examination of the neoliberal globalization processes that have undermined the region's traditional agro-export industries, such as the sugar and banana industry, which was what his first book was on, the sugar industry in particular, and that have undermined these traditional agro-export industries that have been sustained under complex preferential aid regimes. In Chapter 2, they offer a rigorous assessment of the region's institutional and governance challenges, unpacking the regional policy framework, as well as the regional and national institutional mechanisms for executing a viable Caribbean food security policy. And they also point to the fiscal and financial constraints stymieing institutional effectiveness generally. They welcome the shift in regional and national emphasis towards market competitiveness, but flag the contradictory political impulses that are undermining a regional commitment to the CARICOM Common Agricultural Policy, which acts as a major distortion of incentives. Indeed, and I quote from them, they stress that, and I quote, the major shortcoming of this CARICOM Common Agricultural Policy is the fact that it is not a common policy, but rather seeks only to harmonize national policies. Within this context, the subsidiary principle which underpins the policy, that is, preeminence of regional policies only when national policies are less advantageous to member states, could seriously undermine its implementation. However, shifting from the regional to the national, they also lament the welfare bias that has tended to prevail in the at the ministerial level. Given this review of the institutional and governance environment shaping actions towards regional food security, the authors then provide a comprehensive step-by-step review of the empirical trends up to 2021 regarding the state of food security in chapters 3 to 7, with each chapter addressing one of those 4 pillars of food security. They provide a wealth of tables, charts, and graphs to complement the narrative and policy analysis of each pillar. In evaluation of the data, Haiti, unfortunately, stands out as an outlier of severe undernourishment and food insecurity in the region, with its undernourishment prevalence rate of 47.2% recorded over the period 2019 to 21, which is 6 times higher than the CARICOM prevalence rate for undernourishment. 6 times. So while their text offers a rich empirical review of country experiences, the authors highlight that their work was seriously hampered by the weakness of the databases available for painting a comprehensive picture. Nevertheless, they have made excellent use of the global databases, such as those provided by the FAO, and of course, country data from regional and national statistical institutes, which are combined with the available international and regional studies, as well as ministerial documents, policy, and reports. From this robust empirical basis, then, the authors provide in chapter 8, which is their conclusion, comprehensive and bold recommendations touching on every element of the 4 pillars of food security, which, if heeded, would herald a transformation of the conditions and relationships that now structure and rehearse the current regional patterns of food insecurity. Some of the changes that are called for are, and I just list a few, the formulation of stronger incentive and regulatory regimes to reshape consumption and production patterns, a reparatory policy on seeds, an acceleration of the de-risking and modernization of the farming sector through not only insurance, but large-scale investments, for example, in water and energy security, improving data systems through the use of digital technologies to enhance market intelligence and climate resilience. Plus, creating a revamped role for public procurement policies in sustaining food security for publicly funded institutions like schools, hospitals, and prisons. Thus, while the authors are firmly of the view that, and I quote, through the long history of slavery and colonialism, Caribbean states have been structurally conditioned to be food insecure, end of quote. Despite this belief, they provide policymakers and the region's peoples with both information and recommended policy directions that are needed to secure a timely break with the historical script of dependency and vulnerability in the region in order to move towards sustainable food futures. Indeed, as Dr. Brathwaite, the former director of ICA, wrote in the foreword for this volume, and I quote, Food dependence limits your independence and your capacity to take decisions in your own interest rather than in the interest of those who feed you. It will be proper then to characterize this food security question as a battle for food sovereignty in order to, as Brathwaite stated in his foreword, and I quote, remove the last shackles of colonialism. In line with this historical sensitivity, one area that I thought needed greater attention in this text, alongside the long-standing issues of land reform and gender and youth equity in food and agricultural policy, would be the role of food heritage, as well as local, indigenous, and ancestral knowledge in reorientating our foodways away from those processed foods, high sugar and fats, but also away from our high input and agrochemical dependency in our local farming systems. We need to go back in order to go forward in some cases. As remarked then at the beginning of this commentary, this text, while ostensibly relying on the 4 pillars of food security, remember, food access, food availability, food access, food availability, food utilization, and food stability. So while ostensibly relying on these 4 pillars, it really needs an additional 2 pillars, which are the pillars of agency and sustainability. In fact, both Brathwaite and the authors call for a whole of society approach to help reset the commitment to regionalism and the recalibration of our global relationships for fairer treatment of small states. In light of the breadth and depth of this text, it easily stands out as a landmark contribution to the Caribbean discourse on food security that will be of interest to everyone concerned with contemporary Caribbean development challenges and with agriculture and food security. Indeed, I suggest it should become a cornerstone in local and regional public policy conversations for securing the food futures of the Caribbean population. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Northover, for quite an intriguing inventory of the ingredients. Ladies and gentlemen, you will agree with me that palatable things cost. Okay, perhaps you will agree with this statement that delectable things cost. Yes. And so the cost of the text as produced by Dr. Donovan Stanbury and Dr. Lystra Fletcher Paul is only 21,000 Jamaican. Now, let me assist you. That's US $132, 357 Eastern Caribbean dollars, 897 TT dollars, 264 Bayesian dollars. Am I doing well, Bursa? 184 Canadian dollars, 104 Cayman dollars, 104 British pounds, 109 Cayman dollars, 125 US sterling. Now, we accept credit card, debit card, PayPal, Bitcoin, book grant, cash, US, is here. We invite you to go to the table at the back of the room. It's 21,000 and make your purchase. We're also inviting you, those of you here present, to please feel free to, there's a signed wall at the back of the room to add your comments. The authors are here and they're willing to autograph your book. We ask that you dine. Now, to assist us in chewing and digesting on the text and the contents therein. You know, music is always good. It titivates the soul. And so we have arranged for you a musical presentation to assist that process. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to put your hands together and to welcome 2 presentations from Mr. Stephen Stanbury. And right after, I invite you to turn your attention to the screen as we introduce our guest speaker, our keynote speaker, the Honorable Floyd Green, Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Mining. Mr. Stanbury. Sorry about that. These things, technical difficulties. All right, my name is Stephen Stanberry, as you know already, son of the doctor here, the esteemed doctor. And thank you. I will be performing for you two pieces. The last time it was with a band, but this time it's going to be solo pieces. So the first piece is Johann Sebastian Bach's Prelude in C minor, BWV 999. And then afterwards, I'll be performing Eric Satie's Genopipede number 2. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Floyd O'Brien Green is an attorney at law, Member of Parliament, who served as Jamaica's youngest Minister of Agriculture. A son of St. Elizabeth, he is now serving his second term as Member of Parliament for St. Elizabeth, Southwestern, known as Jamaica's bread basket. A champion to the food heroes, Floyd was molded by Monroe College and further harnessed by the University of the West Indies. He read for a degree in history and a minor in political science at UWI Mona, Jamaica, and then was awarded his Bachelor of Law degree with honors in 2006 from UWI Cave Hill, Barbados, and his legal education certificate from the Norman Manley Law School, Jamaica, beginning his career as an attorney at law. Floyd served as president of the Student Guild in Cave Hill and went on to serve as president of the Caribbean's first and largest young professional political organization, Generation 2000, G2K, an affiliate of the Jamaica Labour Party. From 2016, he served in the Jamaican government as the Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Minister of State in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries in 2019, Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries in 2020, and then was assigned Minister with responsibility for digital transformation in the Office of the Prime Minister. During his years of service, Floyd is credited with tabling Jamaica's national youth policy, forming the Jamaica Youth Advisory Council, reforming Jamaica's Child Protection Agency, Child Protection and Family Services Agency, assessing the impact of Jamaica's creative industry. As Minister of Agriculture, Floyd crafted Jamaica's new Face of Food strategy, which focused on strengthening food security, developing agribusiness, introducing climate-smart technologies, and expanding exports. He is responsible for major advancements with Jamaica's first national ID by way of the National Identification System, and has provided birth certificates free of cost for the nation's most vulnerable through the introduction of a program called Operation Birthright. He is currently serving the people of Jamaica as Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining. Floyd believes his greatest achievement is being a father.
So that is the first time I'm being introduced by a video. It was very, very well done. Master of Ceremonies and University Registrar, Dr. Maurice Smith, who I know from a different place and who continues to be a wonderfully brilliant orator. Of course, our Vice Chancellor, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, and other members of the University of the West Indies family, authors, Drs. Donovan Stanberry and Lystra Paula Fletcher, our Senior Research Fellow from Salisis, Dr. Patricia Northover, our Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, Permanent Secretary Dermot Spence, and other of our Chief Technical Directors. I see CTD Parkins is also here. Number of heads of agencies across the ministries, members of the media, specially invited guest persons who are joining us virtually. Good evening, everybody. And I do see my colleague, Minister of Health and former Minister of Agriculture. I know he wouldn't miss this for the world. Dr. Christopher Tufton. So let me apologize for running late. I know we got off to a late start. I was deep in Clarendon with some farmers, maybe on another mission, but I was with farmers. So I apologize for getting here late. I am very, very happy to be here. I am a proud graduate of the University of the West Indies, as you have heard. And I'll be very honest with you. During my time at the UWI Mona, one of my dreams was that there would be a day that they would roll out the UWI podium for me. Now, if you come to different functions at the Undercroft, then you know, depending on the importance of the function, UWI has a whole host of podiums. But when you see they roll out the UWI podium with the UWI crest, you know that big things are happening. And when we used to come over from Chancellor, and we came over for events like this, but for different reasons. At that time, when you are on hall and you hear an event of this nature is happening, you would be here front and center. And I see Sir Morris is here with us. Senator Floyd Morris is here with us. You will be here front and center. And I used to say, hopefully one day, I will have students from Chancellor coming to hear me at this UWI podium. So I'm very happy that I have the UWI podium in front of me today. So that's the first thing why I am very happy to be here. The second reason is because Professor Beckles is here. And Professor Beckles has had a profound impact on my political journey. And oftentimes you don't get the opportunity to tell people about the impact they have had and to tell them thanks in person. And I want to tell you thanks, Prof. Prof, as you would have heard, was principal when I became president of the University Guild in Caville. But his impact was before that, actually. So before I became president, and there was a Guild Council in place, and Professor, as principal, moved to introduce some student fees. This was the first time that the campus was getting student amenities fees because Professor wanted to do some amenities on campus. Suffice to say, the students were not very happy about it. And the Guild president at the time, and I was not on the Guild, I was just in the Faculty of Law, Guild president at the time said that they were going to have a protest. They were going to lock down the campus because, and clearly he came over and he saw me at law and he said, Floyd, I want you with your experience to marshal the Faculty of Law. And I said, no problem. We're in this together as students. And as such, I came out very early with my team and we locked down the Faculty of Law and we were there, and 1 hour passed and we saw nobody coming to give support. 2 hours passed. We saw nobody coming. And I said, but I don't understand this protest. We are here and we're expecting to see the students come and join us. Suffice, little did I know that Professor Beckles, upon recognizing that there was a protest, sent out a media advisory that school was canceled for the day. And as such, no student turned up for the protest. I learned a very important lesson that day. Right? I did. It is better to find common ground and see. So when I became president, we had no protests. We worked together and we were able to achieve great things. It is indeed an honor to be here today, supporting Dr. Stanberry and Lystra Fletcher Paul in launching their book entitled Food Security in the Caribbean, Historical Perspectives, Current Challenges, and Sustainable Solutions. I believe the timing of this launch is impeccable, given the fact that we are in the month of November, a month where we celebrate eating Jamaican. This month-long campaign that seeks to encourage Jamaicans, both local and abroad, to grow, buy, and consume Jamaican foods, which really focuses our attention locally around food security. It has also come at a great time because we continue to have discussions about reducing our import bill by 25% by 2025. And in fact, the Ministerial Task Force has been working non-stop this summer because with the weather-related events like Hurricane Beryl, it has thrown our projections, quite frankly, into a tailspin. So I believe that this book has come at a critical moment in the history of the Caribbean and will become a fundamental piece of literature because it offers key insights into and facilitates much needed conversation around the various challenges impacting food security in the Caribbean and how can we come up with solutions to treat with these in a sustainable way. It is particularly important because of our vulnerability to climate-related shocks and the global issues that threaten food security in the region, including the wars which continue to rage. Dr. Stanberry and Fletcher Paul, with the assistance of their various support systems, clearly worked tirelessly to pull this vital book together, which will help guide all of us. And I'm happy that the book is targeted at policymakers, because the book does make the point that oftentimes the drive towards food security fails at the policy level. So this book is really a prescription for policymakers as we look to execute decisions on behalf of the sector. Could we really join our hands and commend Dr. Stanberry and Fletcher Paul for their unwavering commitment to agriculture and the development of the Caribbean? If you know them, if you've interacted with them even for 5 minutes, you know they live, eat, breathe agriculture. It is a genuine passion for both of them. And as such, it is no surprise that they've decided to combine and compile their knowledge and expertise to share with the rest of the world. As you would have heard, this would have taken time, dedication, and clearly monetary investment to get here. And I want to encourage all of us, as Dr. Smith just did, to show our real support by purchasing the book. I do believe that this will be a wonderful investment, especially if you're involved in agriculture, but just in general, if you care about the region and if you care about our food sovereignty, it is a critical piece of literature to have. I must tell you, I have enjoyed going through it, and I haven't covered every chapter, but I started from the back. I started from the recommendations, and I appreciate how pointed the recommendations are. Oftentimes when you have books of this nature, you have to search and dig through, read through a whole paragraph before you get what is the solution that you are proposing, that as a policymaker, I can pluck out and say to the team, should we implement this? And there are a number of them. And you would have heard some of the areas that were covered around availability, around access, around stability, around utilization. I won't go through much of them, but just to say, I was intrigued by your take on how we could use the public procurement policies to drive food security. And your prescription that truly we should, by way of policy, almost mandate that our public institutions, like our schools, our prisons, are utilizing almost 100% Jamaican produce items, and how that could really help us drive food security. So I appreciate the approach that you have taken in relation to your recommendations. And I welcome our principal for the Mona campus, Professor Denzel Williams. We forgive you, Prof, because we know you were with the Prime Minister, and that gives us. So at the ministry, we do understand the significance of food security, and we do appreciate that our ministry, agriculture, plays a critical role in ensuring Jamaica's food security by driving domestic production. We do understand that there has to be a comprehensive approach encompassing scientific, technological, economic, and social strategies if we are truly going to be food secure and if we are truly going to drive domestic production. We have to modernize our traditional and non-traditional food systems so that we not only satisfy our local demands, but so that we can satisfy the export markets that are out there and our diaspora market that continues to demand high-quality Jamaican produce. That is why we have established 4 strategic pillars at the ministry around what we call the new face of food. And the first pillar is, in fact, food security. So we focus on food security, agribusiness development, climate-smart technologies, and export expansion. And as such, on our food security platform, it's always about what shall we eat? What will we eat? And COVID-19 brought it into sharper focus. If the world closes its borders as it did, what will we use to sustain our existence? It was the first time in a long time that farmers became important again. First time in a long time people call in the ministry to ask, do you have sufficient food out there? And it's the first time we truly saw that our farmers, when put to the task, can produce what we need. And I say that, professors, because coming out of COVID, and we don't tell this story enough, coming out of COVID and some of the interventions of the ministry, we moved to our highest ever domestic production in 2021 and surpass that in 2022, because the reality, people were almost forced to buy Jamaican. So we know that we can do it. And as such, we have, as the book has recommended, chosen the areas that we think we have a competitive advantage. And the book is very bold about saying, choose your areas. You may not be able to do everything. And as the region, we should really look to see what islands are better at what, as we have tried to do under 2025, and focus on those areas. So clearly we have focused, and we are focusing on our tubers. Yam is our number one produced item in Jamaica. For those of you who don't know, our number one export also is yam. So we are focusing on yam, sweet potato, Irish potato, cassava, dasheen. Those are some of the areas that we've said we will provide direct support through our production incentive program to drive production. We're also focusing on some of our orchard crops, our breadfruit, which again now is a superfood sought after all over the world because of its gluten-free properties. And you can now convert that into breadfruit flour and replace what we now consume, flour that is imported from elsewhere. And I should indicate that we're not just talking about that. In fact, we've signed an agreement with USADECO, with the Jamaica Flour Mills, with SCJ, where we've provided over 700 acres to establish cassava and breadfruit to be utilized in the flour making process so that we can drive food security right here at home. Of course, we have to look at our livestock. What will be that meat protein that we will consume? Again, the answers are already there. How can we ensure that the source of that is local and not external? And as such, we have been focusing a lot of energy on our small ruminant development program. Because again, we believe for us that answer is in our small ruminants. Already here in Jamaica, we consume a tremendous amount of, well, goat and goat type meats. So we consume a tremendous amount of curry goat, and unfortunately a lot of what we consume as curry goat is not goat, is actually sheep, is actually mutton, is actually imported mutton. I think at the last figures we import about $3 billion of mutton. And as such, we have established a program to look at rapidly enhancing the population of our small ruminant sector, the productivity, the quality, and focus not just on meat, but on things like milk. And as such, we use our fiscal incentive. And I say these things because the book puts these things as prescriptions. And to be honest, we can see how it has worked. So when we said we're doing our small ruminant development program, we met with the Ministry of Finance and we said, let us introduce a policy where we remove our duties for importing live animals for breeding purposes so that we can drive the rapid expansion of our small ruminant livestock herds. And that has gone tremendously well. In fact, we have imported over 1,200 goats in the year that we've been doing this. And the best part of it, only 200 have been imported by government. 1,000 have been imported by entrepreneurs looking to drive their small ruminant sector. And we're going to continue on that. So we have identified in our food security matrix that the small ruminant sector has to play a big part. The other area that we're focusing on, especially in relation to protein, is aquaculture. And part of what we're doing is to look at a drive to ensure that we increase our availability of our freshwater produced fish right here in Jamaica. We are now constructing a new biosecure hatchery, a recirculated aquaculture system where we'll move the brood stock that we produce from 1.5 million fries each year to 5 million so that we can have more fish farmers. In fact, we've put in an incentive regime that people who want to be involved in producing freshwater fish, if you do the excavation, if you put in the water, we will give you the fish free and we will give you the technical support so that we can have more fish farmers. Because again, this is a part of our food security matrix. One of the things that we're going to do, and this is going to be the first of its time, and Mr. Stanbury spent a lot of time and did a lot of pioneering work in Jamaica while he was permanent secretary on establishing agri-parks. And those have served us well, and we continue to move forward in relation to our agri-parks. Now we want to establish our first ever aquaculture agri-park, where we will bring in persons on the same agri-park parameters, where you come in, we provide you with the infrastructure so that you can drive aquaculture, whether it's around fish, whether it's around prawn. We've identified 300 acres in Amity Hall for this project. So with increased crop and livestock production, which is critical to food security, we also have to focus a lot of our energy on climate smart technologies. We have seen that the climate has changed. There's no question about that. We don't need, unfortunately, to go to COP to have that reality. That is our reality. We started 2024 with me giving a statement in Parliament saying we would do everything in our power to fight the drought. We've allocated $90 million because this year looks like drought is going to be the death of us. That's coming off last year, where we had our hottest and driest year ever on record. And then we quickly transitioned from drought into a Category 5 hurricane in June, the first ever in the history of the world at that time of year. And then as we started our recovery efforts, as we said to our farmers, get back going, and as we said, yes, we're past the worst, October is done and dusted, smooth sailing for the rest of November, here comes Tropical Storm Raphael. So the climate has changed, and as such, part of what we're doing is to improve access and to incentivize the utilization of climate-smart technology and drought mitigation technologies. And we're doing this across a number of things, especially using that to drive our research agenda. So again, we have to look at things like forage and crop cultivars to develop and provide high-quality planting materials so that we improve yields, mitigate disease risk, and improve productivity. We have to look at our crop breeding techniques to build in resilience and quality, especially in the crops of economic importance, through strategic genetic improvement. We have to look at sustainable pest management and incorporate the technology in that. You know, I started today by going to our plant quarantine unit. I don't know if you know the manual process that the plant quarantine division used to use in terms of identifying pests, and pests like fruit flies. They put a little sticky pad on a tree, and then the flies are attracted to the sticky pad, and then they come and they manually look at the insects and identify the insects and take some pictures, and then they log that and they move that to a big book, and then they move that through and they look to see if we're looking for any of the pests that we're looking for that are significant threats, if they're able to identify that. We're now replacing that manual process with 125 smart traps where solar powered, put them in the trees, automatically attracts the flies, then gives you an update on your phone to tell you whether or not the pest that you're looking for has been found. We have to infuse technology in what we're doing. This is what we're doing now. Yes, you can clap for that. Because we have to look at sustainable pest management and look at different control methods, especially biological control methods, so that we reduce our reliance on synthetic chemicals. And it was mentioned by my friend from Salisis as she spoke about the book. The other thing that we have to do if we're serious about food security is identify local feed for our livestock sector. When you look at our import bill, unfortunately, we do have a little catch-22, because as we grow our livestock sector without local feed sources, we end up growing our import bill, because we're importing more to feed. And as such, we have a number of programs now across every area, including fish, to look at identifying local feed sources to enhance sustainability. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just giving you a little insight into some of what we are doing here locally to look at our food security matrix and to answer some of the questions in the book. One of the good points that I took away in reading the book is that 90% of the best practices that were identified in the book for the region are from Jamaica. I think that deserves. So there were a number of our initiatives. So, it's good to go through this literature because it then sort of validates some of the work that is being done and says to us that, listen, what we have to do, quite frankly, is accelerate the pace of the work by ensuring that there are more resources behind the work. There are two areas that I think whether Dr. Stanberry and the team will look at it for their next book, or Professor Williams, who is here now. Every time I come to the university, I try to give them some work to do. I have made a point, and I'm very happy that now I'm going to have to make the point less. I have made the point, Prof, that I do feel that for a long time, a lot of good work in the university did not make its way into policy. And that we have to find a way to bridge the gap between research work and University of the West Indies work and what happens at the policy level. I've been here 2 times in the last 2 weeks, and both of those times, tonight and what we did before, which was around castor oil and castor beans and setting up a standard so that we can have a geographic indicator for castor, was really about the university doing the work that is needed to solve the problems that we have in policy and providing us with the prescriptions. So I want to commend the university and give the university a big round of applause for moving in that direction. So, Professor Williams, this is really your book along with Dr. Stanberry. And it has to do about how can we solve the financing issues around agriculture. Again, we still have trying to choose my words kindly. Our financial services are not designed to support agricultural enterprise. I find that they are unable to assess risk, that they are risk averse, and as such, they do not channel the resources to ensure that that small entrepreneur who has a bankable idea can move from a small to a medium to a massive farmer. Unless we're able to mobilize capital, we will never be food secure. The university, I believe, is well placed, especially with your expertise, especially with Dr. Stanberry, to give us some of the prescriptions that we can take to the financial sector and say, listen, these are some of the things that we think you should implement, or even better, that we can put in policy to cajole, force our financial sector to reform, to serve agriculture better. I think now is a good time for that sort of work. And it's a good time because part of what we're doing at the ministry now, under the direction of the Prime Minister, is to look at a long-term national development plan for agriculture. And he has asked us to come back to him by the 31st of March with that framework. So I'm hoping that as tomorrow morning lights, Doctors Stanberry and Fletcher and Professor Williams, and we can have the forward about the historical perspective from Professor Beckles, will work on helping us to treat with the issues around financing a food secure Caribbean. So to close, I want to congratulate Dr. Stanberry and Fletcher Paul for putting together this game-changing material. I have no doubt that it will play an integral role in guiding the future of agriculture in the region. Please secure your copy of the book as a testament not only to supporting the authors, but as a testament to eating Jamaican, as a testament to regional food security, as a testament to the good work that is being done at the University of the West Indies, our university. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, for having stirred the pot. You certainly have given us much food for thought. Well done. I want to reiterate the welcome that was extended to Principal Williams. I don't know if he wishes to rise to the occasion and to respond to our guest speaker. I'll invite him so to do, and let me also welcome Minister Tufton. So, Professor Williams.
Thank you very much, our illustrious and elusive Master of Ceremonies, University Registrar. I am not sure if I'll rise to the occasion to respond to the Minister, but what I can say is that if I didn't know that the Minister was a lawyer, I thought you were an old farmer, because you have done so well. Give the Minister another round of applause, please. Yes, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, again, let me apologize for being late, but I thank our very distinguished Vice Chancellor for the effortless way in which he has actually represented his university. And thank you so much, sir, for stepping in. Let me acknowledge Vice Chancellor Beckles. Let me acknowledge Honorable Minister Green, Minister Tufton. Welcome, sir, and good to see you. Let me also acknowledge Senator Floyd Morris. Senator, welcome. Thank you very much. Let me also recognize former Principal Weber and Lady Weber. I think Principal Weber is here. Yes, good. Welcome, sir. Let me also recognize our distinguished colleagues from the UWI, Mona Center, and all the other UWI entities. And let me also extend heartiest congratulations to our authors this evening, Stanberry and Paul, Fletcher Paul. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed good to see you all here celebrating with our distinguished authors this evening. Now, my program had said I should have said welcome and all of that stuff, but I think it would be remiss of me not to make a few comments as it relates to this remarkable piece of work by our distinguished registrar, Dr. Stanberry. I looked at it, Minister, and I was very pleased to recognize your own contribution that you would actually have read the book, because a lot of the things you say are actually in the book. So that's a good sign. But this evening, I am very pleased to really celebrate the launch of this important text with our registrar. And not only because when you think of Donovan Stanberry, you think of agriculture. When I was growing up as a young boy, and you say agriculture, there are two people who came to your mind, Donovan Stanberry and Roger Clark. That's what you would think of. So you know that food and Donovan goes together. But this evening, the truth is that the text provides much more than food for thought. And I want to recognize that the issues covered in the text really is about food security. But Minister Tufton, you will be really appreciative. That is a very integrative text because it has touched on something close to your heart, which is really how food and health combine for development. And so what we have seen this evening is really an important piece of work by Stanberry and Fletcher Paul, really tackling a fundamental developmental issue that is going to define our region and our country in the years ahead. And that is the issue of food security. Importantly, however, if you were to really make the case for this book, Vice Chancellor, the case is actually made when you look at the counterfactual. You look at the counterfactual to the book, which is food security, but if you want to really make the case for writing this book, the counterfactual is food insecurity. And when you look at food insecurity, you're starting to appreciate and recognize the importance of why this work is going to be a game changer in terms of policy making, Minister Green. The data is showing that over 57% of the region's population is food insecure. And most importantly, over 52% of the region's population cannot afford to buy food for a healthy diet each day. Food insecurity, therefore, is where the real challenge lies. Insecurity results in poor nutrition and poor food choices, which leads to high prevalence, Minister Tufton, of NCDs. And NCDs, as you would appreciate, impact our development through the increased cost of healthcare, lower levels of productivity, and increased levels of poverty. And because of food insecurity, we are unsure of the future of our region, as the next generation of Caribbean people are at risk of high NCDs and thus not able to have the health and well-being to tackle our developmental challenges as we look to the close of the 21st century. It's therefore imperative that we have a food-secure nation and region. And there is no better person to lay the platform for us to have a food-secure region and nation than Dr. Stanberry and Dr. Fletcher Paul. Not so much because of Dr. Stanberry's stature, but because of his vocation. He served as one of the longest PS in the Ministry of Agriculture, and also with a minister who knows a thing or two about food, Minister Clark. Stanberry and Paul have actually provided us with a carefully researched text which shows the urgent need for building a food-secure region where all people have access to sufficient and safe food and nutritious food as well. That is going to deal with their dietary needs and also an active, healthy lifestyle. Their recommendations in the book, as you would have heard from Minister Green, are quite practical, and they provide solutions that are attacking a regional problem. They have provided for us and for policymakers important directions as to how we should tackle an important problem that is going to shape our future. And therefore, colleagues and friends, this really brings me to the point about why universities are important. Because I do not think that Stanberry could write this book being a student at Clarendon College or Garvey Marseille. I do not think that the kind of knowledge that emanates from this particular text could emanate from persons who do not have the necessary tools and the skill sets to analyze the problem in a very scientific way. Those things you get only at the level of a university. You don't get these things, Minister, at a high school or a secondary school level. Secondary school and high school, while we appreciate the importance of those rungs in the education ladder, to lay the foundation for the numeracy and the literacy and to develop you as critical thinkers. The truth is that the tools that you're going to need to now navigate these important challenges in a global economy only come from a university. And it is for that reason why I would like us to dispel this notion and starting to question what is the value of a university. Stanberry and Paul this evening have proven that that argument is moot. And so I am very happy that once again our University of the West Indies has come to the fore, Minister, and we have now provided critical research that can help to navigate and to guide the path towards our development. I appreciate the concerns that you have and the other areas that you have tasked the university to look into in terms of fulfilling the broader policy mandate of developing a food-secure region and nation. Financing is critical, both for agriculture, but most importantly, financing is critical for education. Because once you finance education, the outcome will be what you are asking for financing agricultural commodities as well. And so the case is very, very clear to me that a strong university is needed for a strong nation and a strong region. And therefore, I want to use this opportunity again to celebrate Stanberry and Fletcher Paul for once again putting the university in the limelight of making value-added contribution to nation building. I celebrate you, I thank you for the work, and I look forward to us fulfilling even further developmental agenda by tackling bigger problems which we know our university can do. Congratulations again, and thank you for the book.
So thank you, PVC Williams. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's clear, fungi and pepper pot, cuckoo and flying fish, ackee and saltfish, the text and the strategic direction and policy of the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Mining, they go hand in hand. They go hand in hand. I want to especially acknowledge our co-author, Dr. Lystra Fletcher Paul, who is online. And at this time, I want to invite our author, our lead author, Dr. Donovan Stanberry, the chef of the evening, to share with us what it is that he would have done. So ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, could you pull up your chairs to your table, put your hands together, and welcome for the response our author, Dr. Donovan Stanberry.
Thank you very much, you are, and welcome everybody. Thank God for the good weather. The last time we attempted to do this, Beryl intervened. Raphael rather. But we are happy to be here this evening. I'm not going to go through chapter by chapter. I think Dr. Nortover did an excellent job. And Jamaica, we should really be proud of ministers that read. and we have two of them here. Ladies and gentlemen, I really became preoccupied with the whole matter of agriculture and food security from my high school days. The principal professor, though he's claimed that he doesn't know about Garvey Marcel. And I forgive him. But I invite him to check ISA and ascertain which are the 4 schools that are in the DeCosta Cup finals. And I'm sure he'll hear of Garvey Marcel. I'm not so sure about Mannings. But in the 80s, in my teenage years at Garvey Marcel, and I have my mother here who was my teacher, Mrs. Valda Gale. Big her up, please. I became really fascinated with food because when you go to boarding school, ladies and gentlemen, you were always hungry. You just never had enough food. And then now, as my luck would have it, I went to Russia to study. And I went during the most tumultuous period when the whole Soviet, in fact, I went to Soviet Union and left Russia. Because I went there before, during the deconstruction and after. And it was not uncommon to go in a supermarket, huge supermarket, and there are only 4 items in there, 2 of which are salt and matches. So food was very important. And then, of course, I had the extraordinary privilege of leading the Ministry of Agriculture for 13 years, where we grapple with these issues. And so I decided to leave the Ministry of Agriculture. After 14 years, if you stay longer, your blood pressure go up and you probably drop dead or something. So I left, not because anybody wrote me, because I do understand what permanent means in permanent secretary. But I left because I felt very strongly that as a people, we were allowing other people to write our story. And in that regard, Minister Tufton is here, and he would know the extent to which he inspired me, because he was a very good minister, but he was really an academic at heart. And he didn't know at the time that I was trying to copy him. So every time he writes a book, I write one. Right? So that's why we have been focused on food security. I want to make one bold point, because there's no point going through the book. I want you to read it, and enough has been said about its content. And the truth is, barring adverse weather episodes, every single year, the agriculture sector grows. 220,000 farmers, 75% of which are operating on less than half an acre. But collectively, when you aggregate their produce, I make bold to say that outside of disruption occasioned by the weather or bad weather, we really could eat healthily and wholesomely with all the produce that our farmers produce. And I know that every year we didn't worry about growth when I was there, and it's continuous. And we saw how the sector rose to the challenge, as the minister said, during COVID, because farmers are resilient. The hurricane is today, tomorrow morning the farmer is in his field cleaning up and getting ready to go back. But the truth is, in as much as our farmers have served us well and has really laid the basis for our food security, in Jamaica we are 60% dependent on others for our food. But if you should take a clinical look at the food import bill, and I did a series of articles in 2019, I would have done more, but the late Richard Bernal told me, stop writing in the newspaper and write books. The truth is, when you dissect and decipher that food import bill, we can replace a good 40% without any impairment to our health. So we are doing well. The truth, though, ladies and gentlemen, is that I believe the time has come for agriculture to make a quantum leap. And it is here I want to focus my attention for the next 2 or 3 minutes. We have to be transformative. The production incentive minister always get the farmers going, and they will always produce. But we now have to lay the foundation for agriculture to make a seminal contribution to our national development. And I have every confidence that we can. But we have to do it in a manner that takes cognizance of the configuration of the sector, because we cannot dislodge the 220,000 farmers. We have got to find a model that embraces them and twin them with more productive people. And there are many things in Jamaica we take for granted, and the minister is correct. Most of the case studies in the book are Jamaican case studies, not because they are not good things happening in the rest of the Caribbean. But fortunately, in an environment where there is a dearth of data, I'm not an exploitative person, but I managed to use charm in the first instance. And when that don't work, I call favors. And when that don't work, I intimidate. But I want to thank the people in the agriculture sector who are so generous with the data. And a lot of things that we take for granted here are really models to build the new agriculture. So we say that we have to find a way of embracing the farmers. And I just give one example. In the 70s when I was growing up, you have yard fowl. And you catch the fowl early Sunday morning. You put it over a pudding pan and leave out the head. And get a sharp knife and one chop. Well, we were hungry. And you pick that fowl before my grandmother go to church and it cook all day. And you put nail or young papaya. But look what we have done to the poultry industry. Nobody does that anymore. In fact, when they do that now, young people say it's cruelty to animals. But we have been able to build a modern poultry industry. And as a nation, we must be proud that in one of the most critical proteins, we are fully self-sufficient. And all the elements have come together in the poultry industry to make for that transformative agriculture. So there are the two major players who put their money where their mouth is and invest huge money in processing, in providing extension services to the farmers. But the most important part of that model is that they didn't leave the small farmers outside. They embraced them. They provide them with the support. They provide them with the technical assistance. The DBJ, when I used to work at PIOJ in agriculture, I used to write the chapter on agriculture. And 99% of DBJ loans was for poultry farmers. They single-handedly modernized poultry. And that was deliberate. And if that was not enough, we have a fully integrated thing. The same guys who own, they own from the baby chick, they own the feed, they own the veterinary part of it. And the government support was extremely critical. And I don't think we should ever make any apology. I hear people writing rubbish sometimes. That we, even in an environment of liberalization, consecutive governments have maintained the 260% duty on imported bird. And people say, Lord, how poor people are going to manage. We are managing. Because 40% of that nice bestious chicken or you see dress up in the supermarket are really produced by small people. We have to embrace that kind of transfer of technology, clustering of small farmers, developing them the discipline to work within a contract, because that is how we are going to make the quantum leap. And we can say the same about egg, we can say the same thing about, well, I don't eat pork, but I have to speak the truth. It's a very modern industry. So that's one. We have to find a model that pulls the farmers with us. Because let me tell you something, people talk all kind of thing. If I go anywhere tomorrow and plant 50 acres of tomato, and every other small farmer planting them half 1 square and so on, in 3 months, is it 3 months to take or 6 weeks, whatever time, you are going to find that you have a glut Our market is too small, ladies and gentlemen, and we have to be export focused. And that is the difference I want to see. So I'm content with going to the coronation market, but I think we can harness more wealth out of agriculture. So that's one. The second thing is a policy is important. And we have spoken about procurement. It is almost criminal that we spend $4 billion, and sometimes we use the wrong matrix. Because I've heard ministers stand up and say, boy, the government doing great, we're spending $4 billion on school feeding. And I know, because my wife is a teacher, so she carries on the NutriBun and all those things. What is that $4 billion doing? Providing revenue for farmers from outside our shores. Because the NutriBun is wheat and all of those kind of things. It cannot be, ladies and gentlemen, beyond us to make the linkage between a school and the small farmer in the community. When we have spending power, that government is the biggest spender in the economy, we have to get more leverage out of it. Our tourism industry started with Wickham McNeil and perfected by the current Minister of Tourism. You can't have a sector with 4 billion people coming here having to eat 3 meals a day, and our farmers can't get part of the action. And when you look on the food import bill, quite a bit of what we import, I don't know why on earth I will go to China and ask for hockey and saltfish. Why are we allowing our tourists to come here and want Texas beef and all those things? I go to Cuba. Well, I don't know if the tourism is thriving as this, but probably that's not a good example. But the truth is, we must make the linkage, and we must be serious about it. We must be deliberate, and we must use policy to achieve it. But it's not only in terms of export and growth. I know Minister Tupton is very concerned about our health, obesity, NCDs. When I was in the ministry, I tried to write letters, they're on file. What the developed world used to get us out is what they call, phytosanitary and sanitary, all kind of those big words. And they prescribe standards, Codex Elementaris, and all of those things. And the hoops that you have to jump to get food in their market in terms of standards. When I look at what we have to do in agriculture to get our conch into Europe, whole heap of money, rigid standards. That's fine, because they are protecting their people's health. And I'm saying, why can't we prescribe those same standards to get out all of those processed food laced with sugar and salt that are literally killing our people? And we have to change the mindset. Because one of the marks of affluence in Kingston here, I will never get adjusted to Kingston life. See my good son there? I don't grow him like that. People boast. This is a mark of affluence. Oh, I don't cook on a Friday. Half of the problems I have going home on a Friday evening, the sunset catch me on road as a good Sabbath keeper. It's because of the KFC line and Riddles Road. Yes. And people boast and say, it's a mark of affluence. I'm going Burger King, I'm going KFC. And nobody glorified the things that we have which are good and wholesome. Final point I want to make, because Lystra, my co-author, is coming online. And this is the point I want to make about resilience. And we have better take food security seriously. We have seen the kind of shocks that we have experienced. And we talk a lot about climate, which is real, but few people talk about the economic shocks. The oil crisis of 73, that spiraled into a food crisis. The 2008, I was the old Minister Tufton at that time when the world turned upside down. And food was, as we say in the Bible, a piece of bread could buy a bag of gold. And of course, the sudden erosion of our preferential markets in sugar and banana, those have collapsed. And read my first book. I go to there every week. And every time I go there, it tears my heart to see the decimation of the community because of the demise of sugar and banana where banana was. And we see what happened. We saw what happened rather in COVID and the Ukraine war and so on and so forth. One of the most critical challenges, and here I want to throw it back to Minister and our university here, is that even if we had all the monies in the world, it will take us some time to revive agriculture and really lift production in a significant way because of the bottleneck of planting material and seeds. And Dr. Nato said we have to repatriate our seed policy and our seed supply. A lot of the species that we know and use as food, a lot of our varieties have become, I don't know the biology, but I hear people say they become corrupted and need to be cleaned. I don't have a clue what that means, but all I interpret from that is that they are not, when you plant them, you don't get the kind of yield that you used to get. And we are too reliant on others for our planted material. I hear somebody said just recently, people have new hope. I hope it's not false hope about reviving the sugar industry in Veer, where I'm from. And I challenge any man. It probably take at minimum 7 years to bring back the sugar industry, even if you had all the money in the world. Where are you going to get the planting material from? And unfortunately, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but the reality is a lot of the solutions to the problem, we really have to go backwards. We are complaining and talking about importing small ruminants and cattle. The great work of T.P. Lecky. A small country like this, 5 tropical breeds. It's big science that. Varieties of crop that are indigenous to us, that are adaptable to our conditions. The great work of the Don McGlashan, the work in banana of Janet Coney, who is here. See that fear there? The reason why we survive the rains and the hurricane and have banana is because of that variety. People like Janet Coley and Gonzalez and those people. We had the science. And ladies and gentlemen, we have to move, and it is fortuitous as I close that the Ministry of Agriculture came on board with us in this Eat Jamaica month. And the principal talking about bringing Gowon to town. Well, we have bring the town to Gowon, right? because Prof. Taylor, or biotech, and all the science that we have varieties of potato which are extinct. We have varieties of yam, sweet yam, and those yam that are extinct. Some of the legumes that I ate as a child, there's a thing called Barnabas, you know Barnabas bean? Huh? My grandma used to cook it in soup. New treat, look at me. Huh? You can't find them. And the insult is, when we wanted to clean up some of it, we share what is there. We had to take plane and go to North Carolina and ask the University of North Carolina to clean up these varieties for us. These are not science that are rocket science with any will probably patent and secret and that kind of thing. It can be done right here. And unless we solve that planted material thing, you could have money until money asks you what's the matter. That is going to be our bottleneck. Ginger. Minister Tufton sent our ginger to Japan when we were with him there in agriculture. Independent validation of our ginger as the most potent in the world. We started a program to get our farmers to use clean planted material. And it's an opportunity waiting to be exploited. You can make money. And the ministry fight with it at Orange River until they just peter out. Nobody taking it up. Our cocoa. Thank God they're doing some work at our university in St. Augustine. Wanna find 8 fine flavored cocoa. Cocoa is one of those things where the demand far outstrip the supply. You know when was the last time somebody planted an acre of pure starting cocoa in this country? Probably before my mother was born. So ladies and gentlemen, we have it in our power and we can make this country great through agriculture. Thank you all for your support, and I really hope the internet doesn't fail us, because I want to hear from my co-author, who unfortunately was here 2 weeks ago for the original launch. And you know what happened with Raphael, but she's joining us online. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm really sorry that I'm unable to be there in person in Jamaica. As Donovan said, I was there, but then Raphael had a different idea about what should happen. First of all protocol observed, I want to say good afternoon, good evening to the Vice Chancellor, Professor Beckles, the ministers, both Professor Tufton and the Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Tufton and the Minister of Agriculture, specially invited guests, members of the University Committee, University Environment. I just want to say a special hello to my sister and my cousin who are in the audience representing the Trini Posse. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So much has been said, and it's almost as though everybody has read my speech. So I'm not going to say very much. I just want to say that this book, which is the brainchild of Dr. Stanbury, was sort of envisaged. It's fortuitous that in 2022, he asked me if I would be interested in partnering with him in writing the book. At the time, I was just about to retire from teaching in the Faculty of Food and Agriculture, and I thought it would be a good idea a good retirement project. And I also thought it was a good way to give back to the region and to share a bit of the knowledge and experience that I had gained over the last 30 years or so of working in this field of agriculture. So I agreed to write the book, but under the condition that I would have no strong deadlines. I wanted to take my time and at my leisure during my retirement and write the book. So I want to thank Donovan for giving me the opportunity and for keeping his word that there would be no tight deadlines in writing this book. Now, previous speakers have spoken about the various chapters of the book, so I'm not going to go into the main findings of the chapters. I just want to highlight a few things about observations about what, based on my experience in writing the book. One, it was very difficult to find up-to-date and reliable data for many variables and indicators, things like unemployment, poverty, hunger and food security indicators. So we really need to strengthen our national statistical units. Jamaica stands out as an exception in this regard, and I would like to commend the work of the PIOJ and Statin in this area. That the key to regional food security lies in collaboration and coordination at all levels, national and regional level, between the public and private sector, among the various ministries, agriculture, health, education, finance, in rationalizing the roles and responsibilities of agencies, in terms of transportation and logistics, in harmonizing policy and legislation. And I just want to say a little bit about the role of the private sector. We talk about public-private sector partnerships. Too often, the private sector in our region are seen as just people who import poor quality, cheap food and sell it at high prices for us to eat. So the private sector needs to take stock of their role in this whole process of agriculture and food security. There's a much bigger role that can be played in terms of your investment in our local farmers. There's a big role that can be played even in your relationship with government, with insurance, for example. I was speaking with Dr. Patrick Antoine of the CPSO, the Caribbean Private Sector Organization. And he was saying that there are useful examples in other countries where the private sector is partnering with government, where government, for example, is underwriting small sections of the insurance policy for farmers in collaboration with the private sector. So if they're really serious about food security in this region, the private sector has to play a much bigger role than just an importer of food. We must invest in our farmers. The third thing is consumer education, which is pivotal to changing the tastes and preferences and hence the demand for healthy food. We are fighting against $1 billion advertising campaigns by our supermarkets, by the fast food chains, and the inability, and in some cases, the reluctance of governments to persuade or to dissuade the private sector from importing unhealthy food. Because in some cases, governments are helpless to work against the private sector, and I can say this because I'm not aligned to any institution, because the private sector is paying for the campaigns of the government. And so they dare not say anything to stop the private sector from doing what they want. So it's important that we work a lot better with the private sector to change consumer tastes and preferences. And to do this, we must have targeted messages which are sustained and constantly measured and adjusted based on the feedback that we are given, because we are constantly fighting against counter messages like fat shaming and things like that, that people are saying that, you know, you should not speak about obesity. I have spoken with young people who are eating everything that's wrong, and you say to them, but you know that it's wrong to eat it. And they say, yes, but it tastes good. We are fighting against the pleasure centers, the salts, the sugars that people eat, that discourage them from even changing their eating habits. So we have to find ways of changing the consumer preferences. So you change the demand for healthy, nutritious food. The other issue is research and extension, which are important elements in increasing production, productivity, and affordability of healthy, nutritious, local food in the region. And that is why the university is so critical to its success. And in closing, I'd like to say that this book is by no means the final word on the subject of regional food security. It's a comprehensive treatise on all the of food security from a Caribbean perspective. We see it as a valuable resource, a source of data and information in one publication. For those of you who have tried to write papers on food security for the region, you know that you have to go to several different documents and databases and so on to get the information. This book has most of that information under one cover. So we think it's an excellent textbook for courses dealing with the subject of food security. And those of you who would take the time to read the book, I'm sure you'll find areas where it can be improved. And already we have had suggestions from Dr. Northover and from the minister. So we urge you to please share those views with us so that they can be incorporated in future editions. We would also like to include more case studies from other countries so that we can learn from the experiences of others in the region. And finally, I'd say that this book was not possible without the help, inputs, and support of a number of persons. I'm not going to call all, but please forgive me if I just mention a few people who have been really pivotal and instrumental in making this a reality. First of all, the Almighty, for giving me life, strength, and wisdom to write this book. I'd also like to thank my husband, Neil, and my two sons, Kamau and Tariq, who have been the wings underneath my wing, the wind underneath my wings, who have allowed me the time to write after retirement when they thought I'd be home resting my old weary body and cooking healthy, nutritious foods for them. I'd also like to thank my siblings, Ian and Louise is there in the audience, as well as my family, the Springer family, who have been my cheerleaders throughout this life and have supported me over the years. And finally, I'd like to thank the friends and colleagues who have provided inputs and feedback at various stages. But last but not least, the Ministry of Agriculture and the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies for hosting this event. And a special thank you to Professor Northover, to Dr. Northover for her kind words in reviewing the book. Ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a consumer, a researcher, a producer, a processor, an educator, a policy maker, or a person from the private sector, you, and I should say we all, have to be advocates for Caribbean food security. So let us all make a conscious effort to buy, grow, and eat local and regional food, because we cannot be dependent on others for something as fundamental as the food we eat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, and I hope you will support us by buying this book and implementing most of the recommendations that we have put forward in the book. Thank you and good evening.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will agree with me that we have been well fed. So we want to thank ever so much Dr. Lystra and Dr. Donovan for producing this text. Now, don't just salivate, support. I'm really encouraging you to leave with your takeaway bag. There's a table at the back of the room. It's $21,000. Please pick up your copy of the text, and if you are unable to do that today, 21,000. If you're able to pick up your copy today, then we're here tomorrow. He won't be here on Sabbath, but we'll make arrangements to get the book to you. Dr. Stanbury, I think we're making a presentation to the library, so I'm going to ask you to do that at this time, and then we're out of here.
Ladies and gentlemen, since I have the floor, let me just thank the important people who made this possible today. I just know how to write. I could never put on something like this without the support of the Ministry of Agriculture, and it was very fortuitous that this happened to be Eat Jamaica Month. So they came on board. So all of these banana and things you said there is all the Ministry of Agriculture. Give them a big hand, please. I don't know why the PS is not in his upfront seat, but I want to salute especially Dermot Spence, the second greatest permanent secretary ever in the Ministry of Agriculture. And Yolande Gibson, my former secretary there, who remains very loyal, who toil, you know. And of course, I have a whole contingent. We can have prayer meeting right here of my church people in the audience. Give them a hand, please. My wife, who is here, who is very supportive, Carlene. My son, who demonstrated spending good money on him to send him to music school. My beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. And my principal and VC, who I know, principal, it was difficult for you, but you made it, and I know that you are very supportive. And all my people from the Office of the Campus Registrar, it's hard work there, but, you know, if something is important, you find the time to do it. Thank you all very much. Mrs. Maloney is the president of my fan club. Give her a hand, please. And Mrs. Gale, who is a mother to me, give her a hand. So with that, thank everybody, and please, we have food. Please enjoy at the end. I want to make 3 presentations. So the first is to our campus acting librarian, Miss Marshall, Louis Marshall. Finally, I reserve the last thanks to Professor Weber. Professor Weber was my supervisor who taught me the art of research. He's, without a doubt, the greatest supervisor ever. And I thank him very much. God bless you, everybody, and thank you so much.
So, one more for the road. There's an old man. And every year, he and his son plant a tomato garden together. This particular year, however, the son is in jail. And so the old man writes him a letter. My son, it is regrettable that you can't be here to plant the tomato garden with me this year. The soil is too hard for me to dig myself. I look forward to the day when you come home so we can continue this tradition together. The son writes back, Father, don't dig up the tomato garden. That's where the bodies are buried. That night, the police show up at the old man's house with a warrant to search the ground for the bodies. After several hours of digging around, they find nothing. They apologize to the old man and they go on their way. The next day, the man receives another letter from his son. Father, given the circumstances, that was the best I could do. You should now be able to plant your tomatoes. Go and purchase your book. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen.